This episode of Hak5 is brought to you by GoToAssist Express, Gamefly, and Domain.com. Got a great idea? It all starts with a great domain.
Hey guys, and welcome to this episode of Hak5. My name is Shannon Morse, and you guys have been clamoring for some Metasploit, so we're bringing you just that, a whole episode dedicated to it. Mubix from Room362.com is down for some tips and tricks about Metasploit that you may or may not know. Stick around for that, but first, a word from our sponsor, GoToAssist.
The best way to provide technical support is to do it online with GoToAssist Express. You can help friends learn how to use new software or fix family computer problems without being there in person. GoToAssist Express lets you easily view and control a computer online so you can quickly resolve technical issues. Whether you're in customer support, technical consulting, or management, or just a computer guru, GoToAssist Express will help you increase revenue, reduce travel support time, and service more clients. Try GoToAssist Express free for 30 days. For this special offer, you must visit gotoassist.com/hak5. That's gotoassist.com/HAK5 for a free trial.
So today we're going to show you a basic 101 on Metasploit. It's not that scary exploitation tool that everybody thinks. We're going to show you how to dig in deep with it and kind of understand the total value of it as more than just an exploitation framework. And when I say framework, that really defines Metasploit. Metasploit started in 2002 and has grown into the biggest Ruby project in the world. And it has so many libraries and makes so many other things than just exploitation easy because of the libraries in the API called Rex that it personifies the word framework. It has so many things. So we're going to show you some of the advanced features, the little hocus pocus stuff that I've shown before. And then we're going to get into some of the cool stuff that it can also do that isn't exploitation. So we're going to start off with the exploit module section, and let me set that up a little bit beforehand. But first, a real quick public service announcement. Please use the SVN copy. You can find out how to do that at the bottom of the download page. It helps the Metasploit devs and all the people on the mailing list to answer questions because you're using the most updated version, which probably has fixes for some of the stuff that you might be asking anyways. So just real quick that, and we're going to go over here and show you what we're going to be doing. So we have the hacker box out here, and we have perimeter and defense in depth. We have a web server out here, web SQL server out here, a domain, and a workstation. You guys all see that? Cool. All right. So we're going to show you real quick how to get into that set of systems and start moving around with the exploit modules. And to make the demo go a little bit easier, we're not going to actually use a real exploit because sometimes they fail. You just have to kind of get the right setup. So demo fail gods can't get us when we're using a standard username and password. So let's start off with getting into Metasploit. Pentest Exploits Framework 3. MSF console. Takes a second to load. The reason why it takes a second to load is they have both Ruby 1.91 and Ruby 1.8 compatibility. 1.91, if you get it working, is so much faster. And they're really trying to get people to move over to that so that they can get it so that you can run Metasploit 10 times faster than it is loads right now because it literally loads all the modules up at once. So it's loaded, and we are going to get into use, because that's how you load a module, Windows, SMB, PSExec. Now, the PSExec module is exactly like sysinternals, except for it has one cool little feature that we'll talk about later. But what it does is runs a binary or payload, as we're going to show you, on the target box. So we show the options that it has available, and there's also show advanced, where you have some of these advanced options, including proxies. So you can actually send this through Tor if you want to. Show options. So we set our host, and I'll probably be dyslexic again and get this wrong. We set our payload. Now let me show you before I get into setting payloads, show payloads, that this thing has, show payloads. This thing has a ton. The Metasploit project has a ton of payloads, and they're really well set up so that you can kind of, if you know the format, you can understand exactly what it does. So the first part of the payload name is the OS or operating system that it is run on or available for. The second part is kind of what it does. There's shells, upload, execute, VNC inject, Meterpreter. Meterpreter is the fun one. That's the real good one. But it's a ton, and you can look through it. Now, if that portion of it is followed by an underscore, you know that it's an inline payload. And what an inline payload is means that the whole payload is sent over the wire all at the same time. Now, this can be good for stability reasons, but what is most widely used is the stager one. The stager is used when there's a slash right after the second portion of the payload. That's how you know it's a stager, or in the description. And a stager payload is smaller, it goes over the wire quicker, but comes back and gets the rest of it and pulls it in. This is good because some exploits have a very small buffer area, a very small amount of room for an exploit to happen, and sometimes cannot take the whole inline injection, because the VNC inject one particularly is, I think, around 7 megs when it goes over the wire. So staging that is the best way to go. So we're going to select Windows Interpreter Reverse VNC. That means it's, or Reverse TCP. That means it's coming back to us from that box to the system that we're running. Now, the other cool thing about Metasploit is that it tells you what variables are required. You have to actually use set and the variable name, or it doesn't work. So as you can see now, we have more options. Set lhost, that's our local host, 10, 10, 0. Again, I think I've been dyslexic on this. And for PSExec, it takes a SMB user and password. And we're doing this again for demo purposes. When using an actual exploit, you won't need these. You'll just use the exploit code. And it loads exactly the same way. PSExec is an exploit module, so you're doing everything exactly the same as you would on a real exploit, which has 400 odd exploits in Metasploit. So SMB pass, we already know, we're just using the password so we can get this demo done. Again, you need to use set. And rerun exploit. But before we do, as in a lot of things in the Metasploit framework, you can do a TechH and find all the cool help. Most people don't know about the help inside of exploit. There's a lot of cool features. You can actually get to a point where you can script this using something called a resource file that we can talk about on another time. And script the whole thing and get it in one line. You can get all the options, the payload, and the backgrounding all in one line with exploit. We're going to run exploit TechJ, TechZ. Now, TechZ will make sure that when the payload comes back, the session isn't immediately attached. This is good when you're doing multiple exploits or multiple systems, You don't want it to automatically attach to the session so that you have to background it. You can just exploit, have it automatically background with TechZ, and run the exploit again on a different box if you wanted to. TechJ puts it in a job backgrounding it, so the Z is actually, so it doesn't interact, I'm sorry. All right, so exploit TechZ and our interpreter session is open. So there are a ton of commands in here. Everything from upload to execute to reboot to do registry changes. Interpreter can do amazing things with a little bit, like with least amount of knowledge. Whereas if you just had a command shell, you would have to know a lot of commands to get a lot of the stuff that we do here done. So what we're doing is pretending like we just exploited the web server out on the perimeter. We have an interpreter session going. We got some kind of web exploit or some kind of an SQL injection to get this going. And we have interpreter. So if this is actually attached to a domain, so we got our domain server over here, our SQL server here, and this is actually attached to a domain, which happens all the time. Then we're going to show you how we can take that and pivot into the internal part of the network. So one of the modules that is automatically loaded when you have a interpreter script that is running as administrator or system, like we are right now, is priv. Now there's a bunch of other modules that are out there, including Incognito, which we'll go into next. But priv allows you to do hash dump. And hash dump allows you to do basically a PW dump without having the tool that gets caught by a ton of AV products. So hash dump is priv is automatically loaded. So you don't have to use or do anything to your interpreter shell, and you just do hash dump, and there it is. There's all the hashes that are on the system, and hopefully people don't use different passwords on different systems, because hashes in Windows world are exactly the same on every other box. So if Bob uses password on the web server and he uses his password on the domain controller, the hash is going to be exactly the same. So instead of cracking passwords, we're going to use something called pass the hash. Now, remember that cool thing I said that PSExec does in the module for Metasploit does that the PSExec from sysinternals doesn't? That's passing the hash. Now, Hernan Ochoa from Core Security actually created this method, and what it does is instead of, well, you know what? Let me whiteboard it and show you exactly what's going on when you're doing pass the hash. So when this Windows workstation wants to talk to this domain controller and log in, it will take the password that the user has, hash it using NTLM, and then send an authentication request to the domain controller. The domain controller then goes, let me look at the hash that I have on file and compare it. If it's good, then you are authenticated. So at no time does the clear text password go across the wire. Security, right? Well, that's good for us because we can take that hash without the pre-computing part, because we don't have to have it, and do the exact same thing that the workstation did. So that's the basics behind pass the hash. So what we're going to do with this is we're going to background that interpreter session using Control-Z. We're going to copy the administrator password, or administrator hash, I'm sorry. Show options. We're going to pretend that we have another system, and we've changed the R host. We're going to change it from the Windows or the web server to the domain controller. Hopefully the administrator password is the same on both. So we're going to set SMB pass and paste in our hash. Now, done, show options. Now you can see in the options that instead of a password, we now have a hash as the SMB. Now, if we were running in an actual domain, in the show advanced portion, you can see that SMB domain is another variable that needs to be set. But we're not for this demo, so we'll just run the exploit with the hash. Now we have our interpreter session open on our domain controller. Easy as that. We've just now used a hash instead of a password that we obtained from a different system on another system, virtually in our minds, right? To access another system without using a password, without cracking that actual password. Pretty cool, huh? Well, so that really eliminates the need to crack passwords, right? Well, what if it's attached to domain, but all you get is the local accounts? Can't really use that. Well, not true. Tokens are another method that are another authentication method on Windows that are used kind of like cookies. Now, if you think about web cookies, they store your authentication so that when you go to a different portion of the site, you don't have to authenticate every single time. Imagine if you had to tweet, or if you had to log in every time you tweeted. Suck, especially for people with like thousands and thousands of updates. So that's where tokens come in. Let me show you on board again. If domain admin A, or Bob, decides to log into the workstation to help out the user or whatever problem, his token, instead of his username and password, or his username and password are sent so that he authenticates to the domain. But once he's on and starts doing things, his token is actually stored on that machine. Now, there's a bunch of tokens that are loaded by default and used for services and things like that. And if you're at a system level on the domain, or on the computer or workstation or server that you're on, you can see all of those tokens. Administrators can only, and users can only see the ones that they have access to, but system has access to all of them. So tokens have a limited lifespan, though. Hashes don't. So that, there's pluses and minuses to both. Tokens you can use for domains and possibly pivot that way. Hashes have more lifespan. Tokens stay until a system is actually rebooted. So we're going to show you how in Meterpreter we can use those tokens to add a user and essentially execute commands on a different system using the tokens available. So in Meterpreter, you actually have to load this module called Incognito by saying use Incognito. And this loads that DLL into the Meterpreter session, still not hitting disk at all. Now you have some extra commands available to you in the Incognito commands category. Add group user, add local group user, add user, impersonate token, list tokens, and snarf hashes. List tokens is the one you want to start off with. All right, so we ran list tokens, and we actually have to do attack U to list all the usernames, the user tokens at least. And let me go to the whiteboard and show you. Let's alter our little reality real quick. So say through the web server we got to the SQL server, because a lot of corporations and people are not that bright and do the web and the SQL server inside the perimeter. So, because the web server has to talk to the SQL server. So say we have our second interpreter shell here on the SQL server. Now, there's a possibility that someone with privileges is going to be on the SQL server, or the tokens at least, or someone's going to be logged in because that's a high maintenance type of server. So we're going to use the tokens that we see here, and we're going to pretend that one of the domain tokens showed up, just as if right here where it says new PC administrator, we're going to pretend that that says domain Bob with domain admin Bob, whatever. And easy, we just use add user, and it shows you some help if you just hit enter. Right here we do attack H if we're going to add a user to the domain controller, and you can see that, or you can like type in the IP address or the host name and add a user to the domain using this token. But for our example right now, we're going to pretend that we're doing that, and we're just going to add a user locally to the the VM that we're running on. So we're going to run Bob admin, password same that we've been using. And there it is. We've now added a username and password that we can use the PSExec module without any hashes to be done. So we can, if we had done this on a domain controller, we can now use the PSExec module and throw it at our domain controller and now have interpreter on our domain controller. So we've officially pivoted from web server to SQL server to domain controller. And once you're on the domain, game over. So next up, we're going to go into some of the auxiliary modules. Oh, shoot. Real quick. The other cool thing that Interpreter does that I'd like to really point out is they, in the not so distant past, they added a keylogger. Now the keylogger is kind of cool because what you do is attach it to a specific process, and that's cool in the fact that you don't get all the other, depending on what process you attach to. If you attach it to WinLogon, you just get logins and logouts. So guess what that gets you? Usernames and passwords, and that's it. So you have it attached to WinLogon. WinLogon never stops because it's always running. You just get usernames and passwords. You type dump, key dump pass, and it dumps what has been said. So usernames and passwords is all you get, which is nice. So no gunk to go through. So next up, we got the auxiliary modules.
I'll clean it up.
What the hell are you doing?
It's a freeze pop diet.
That's ridiculous.
No, it's a real thing. I did a bunch of research. So it turns out you can lose a lot of weight on this. You can eat anything you want as long as it's a freeze pop. You're guaranteed to lose weight.
So, I kind of figured out how to edit Wikipedia.
That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard of.
Actually, it's the best idea ever, and I'm going to share it with the world by registering freezepopdiet.com.
No, I'm going to register freezepopdiet.com first and put a picture of a goat because you're a moron.
Too late, I just got it.
How?
I use domain.com. It's domain registration without all the BS.
Cool.
Freeze pop cool. With .coms for less than $10 without pushy upselling, reseller dedicated servers with cPanel, and killer VPS hosting with root access, domain.com is the place to go next time you're looking to start a website or build your new massively multi-scaled side business. Best of all, they're offering Hak5 fans sweet deals on domain names, private registration, and web hosting. Just go to domain.com and use coupon code HAK5, that's HAK5 at checkout to get 15% off your order. Got a great idea? It all starts with a great domain, domain.com.
So we've covered kind of what Metasploit is. We've covered the hocus pocus part where you can do some cool stuff like pass the hash and token stealing, and kind of pivoting through the network to get where you want. But now I want to show you some of the features that I really like about Metasploit. But first, I want to show you some of the other cool things that Meterpreter can do. Inside of the scripts directory under Meterpreter, there are a host of just a ton of Meterpreter scripts that when you're in your Meterpreter shell, you attack or run space the name of the script minus the .rb, and it will do just go look at them. You got things from getGUI, which is a cool tool that will enable remote desktop, add a user for you so that into the remote desktop users, and basically you can then RDP into the system, to a cool thing called get countermeasures, where it will stop the firewall, kill the AV, kill Windows Defender, and basically make it so that you can load any tool that you wanted to on there after that, so that you don't have to worry about your keylogger, if you're not using the one built into Metasploit in the Meterpreter, getting caught by AV. So let's get back into the auxiliary modules. So inside of just Metasploit or MSF console, you hit show auxiliary, if I can spell right. And like I said earlier, it's 190 something different auxiliary modules that they have in there right now. Everything from voice over IP, telephony, brute force or scanning, like what is thing use war dialing, to just SQL mix-ins where you can connect to an SQL server and issue SQL commands, to a cool thing called WMAP. It's a set of modules, scanners, SQL injection, servers. And if you've ever heard of Metasploit, Metasploit actually uses the servers inside of Metasploit in a RC or resource file to script out the starting of all these servers so that you can grab credentials out of the air. But I really implore you to go into and look at the modules and see just how many there are and how they could be used. But for just the time that we have, I'm going to go into the HTTP options one, which is pretty cool. It shows you what options are available. Sometimes you get lucky and you got WebDAV or PUT. But I selected this one because later on we'll show you how to get into and develop your own auxiliary modules, or exploit modules if you're so inclined. So in here we do use, just like an exploit module, scanner, HTTP options. So show options just like we would again, and now you have all the available options for that scanner. The difference here, if you've noticed, is that you have an rhost option instead of an rhost. Rhost has the ability to take in, just like you would with a rhost option, you have either a DNS name or an IP. But with the rhost option, you have the added ability to do CIDR notation, and a little known fact that you can do file. File is a line separated list of hosts that you want to load into your scanner. So say you do a Nmap scan and you grep out just the hosts that have port 80 open, and you have a list of hosts that have that in, just so you can run this module. You can do a file colon, or let me show you. Set rhost file colon temp HTTP servers dot text. Now if I hit enter right there, it would then load into the rhost variable, and when I hit run instead of exploit, because it's an auxiliary module, it would load that file and iterate through each line and run the scanner against it. But for this demo, we are going to use DarrenKitchen.net. Again, you can use proxies, so Tor is your friend. Run. It's real fast because we're just running on one single host, and we got get, head, post option methods available to us. And that, it seems simple and it doesn't seem very powerful at all, but it's the little things that really get you far in a pen test, and it's the little pivots and little footholds that really make a difference. And the more information you have, the better. So we're gonna back out of this and out of the MSF console, and we're gonna show how easy the framework makes it to make something like this. So if you go into the directory for the framework and you go into modules, you can see that it's set up exactly like it is inside the framework. You go into Auxilary, into Scanner, into HTTP, and there's all the modules that are exactly the same as if they were in the menu system. So you can so when you make a module, you put it in the same directory structure, and it'll get loaded just the exact same. So it'll show up in Scanner, HTTP, HTTP options, or whatever you name your thing. So let's go back in here, and Nano, I know Vi, whatever, options, and we're going to look at the options module. So the first part, you got the basics to load a very basic module. You say include MSF auxiliary scanner, include MSF port, all this stuff that you can kind of copy and paste into all the modules you make. And the initialize is just there. Now, that is it. You see that? Let me do it again. That's all the lines of code needed to send an options request, parse it, and put it to the screen. So the socket opening, the request, getting the response back, parsing it, and that's it. Even parsing the file for the rhosts, the CIDR notation, all that is handled by the framework. That's a powerful thing. And most of the stuff in there is just the incorporation of it into the WMAP portion of the database section that we haven't actually covered. So, I mean, it gets down to maybe 10 lines of code if you just look at the only things that are actual code that you have to think about and write. So that, I don't know how to say it any better. That is the power of the Metasploit framework. That right there. I mean, all right, so I challenge you to check out the SVN, get the most updated copy, and make a module for yourself. Most likely there's something similar to what you want to do, or something that you kind of know something about and can make it. Like I said, 10 lines of code to make this module, plus the initialization stuff. So you can find out more at Metasploit.com. Download the Cygwin version if you want to run it on Windows. Check out how to check it out from via SVN. You can also see how to get involved via the Metasploit mailing list, via IRC, and some of the other community ventures that Metasploit has. You can also, of course, get it on Backtrack like I'm running it now. And the guys over at Backtrack actually have a course called Metasploit Unleashed at offensive-security.com/Metasploit-Unleashed. It's a great course, and it's completely free, so you can go through and step through all of this by yourself at your own pace. And me, you can find at room362.com and twitter.com/Mubix. And as always, Hak5.org will have all the show notes and links, and feedback at hak5.org if you have any questions for me.
I want to let everybody know that Gamefly is an amazing service. They are the largest online video game rental service and offer a choice of over 6,000 new and classic titles across all consoles and handhelds. With plans starting at $15.95 a month, Gamefly members can rent 1 to 4 games at a time and keep them for as long as they like. You can also purchase a game if you fall in love with it. They'll send you the box and the manual for a nominal fee. Head on over to gamefly.com/Hak5 to get 2-week free trial membership. Gamefly.com/Hak5.
Here we go, here we go, here we go, here we go, here we go.
I would like to thank Mubix for coming on to the episode this week. You can find all of his information at room362.com. And if you have any questions, concerns, or comments for us, be sure to email us at feedback@hak5.org. This week on Revision 3, Annie is reviewing a Rock Band iPhone application on App Judgment. Be sure to check that out at revision3.com/appjudgment, on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Coming up next week, we're going to have everything from VPN cracking to Linux device hacking and all sorts of other nifty tips and tricks for you. But first, I'm just going to remind you to trust your technolust. See you next week.
Welcome to Module 3 of Whiteboarding with Mubix. Today we'll be going over this and that and maybe some other stuff. But